What is up? Wildlings calling here for another YouTube video from the Ancestral Mind. Today's topic is chicken. What's the problem with chicken? Are you keto, are you carnivore, are you paleo? Are you just health conscious? A lot of people eat chicken. I think it's something like 9 billion chickens at any given time are either alive or they're probably not that many slaughtered every year. Although maybe there are because they have kind of a short lifespan. They do get slaughtered throughout the year. Man, that's crazy. 9 billion, more than humans. There's more chickens on the planet. So today we're going to talk about what are the health implications of eating chicken. Is it the best protein source as it's been propped up to be, which supported all these big mass-produced chicken operations? There's a lot of problems with that. Are there better ways to have chicken? What do you look for when you're sourcing chicken? Chicken and dinosaurs? What? We're going to get into all that and more in today's video, all about chicken, answering the question of chicken. Did you know that chicken is the closest living relative to the T-Rex? Chickens are descended from dinosaurs. And think about how big a T-Rex is. You know, big hind legs, short hands, whatever. Arr. So a group of dinosaurs called the theropods. Theropods, where there was a split between T-Rex and what eventually became chickens. Pretty crazy stuff. What does that mean for us today? And how do we get so many chickens on this planet? So the chicken that you and I know today and that will probably grace the plate of millions of Americans' lives tonight, tomorrow, is all descended from about 4 species of jungle fowl traced back to about 50 million years ago in Southeast Asia. Chickens became heavily domesticated around 10,000 years ago to the point where today it is one of the most widely distributed foods, animal foods on the planet, with something like 9 billion chickens alive at any given day and probably about that many slaughtered each year to be consumed as food. So with any food that is mass-produced, you run into problems, and animals are no exception. You can also have problems with produce and bacterial things, and most produce is actually cleaned multiple ways using even chemicals in a lot of cases and bleach and things like that. So for the most part, you don't see as much of the bacterial contamination of plant foods as you do as animal foods, where it's just harder to clean them and treat them while still remaining somewhat flavorful and tasty. So when it comes to chicken, the number one thing that is most susceptible to chicken today is salmonella. Of course, all of you have probably heard of that. But with chicken specifically, it is Salmonella Heidelberg. Heidelberg? Salmonella Heidelberg. Salmonella Heidelberg is actually what it's called. It's a specific bacteria. And there was an outbreak in 2003 and 2014, which was traced back to a single farm in California called Foster Farms. Foster Farms took an adversarial approach, and they even tried to deny claims, saying that the connection between their chicken and where people actually got sick didn't actually happen. Hard to say, but for the most part, the company handling the product primarily and shipping it and packing it and whatever, they're probably the most responsible for maintaining the integrity and avoiding bacterial contamination. So a big problem with chicken is when you're buying low quality mass-produced chicken that has like assembly lines of chicken and has thousands and hundreds of thousands and even millions of birds processed on a consistent basis through a huge machine of shipping, transshipping, raising from babies, feeding antibiotics to them and feed, which we'll get to in the video as well, and just all the things that have to happen to be able to make profit selling a commodity animal food like that. You're gonna run into issues when you're trying to operate it at that scale. It is unnatural. It just is. It's not the way nature intended. Nature did not intend for us to have 9 billion chickens running through machinery and trucks and warehouses and it's bad news bears. So chicken is one of the most highly and broadly distributed and processed animals on the planet. Pork would probably come next, or pork might even be number one. I don't know. I think chicken beats it. It's probably number one chicken, pork's probably number two, but pork and chicken are two of the big ones that have a huge industrialized food system behind them. And with that, you get problems in more ways than one. Let's get into some other reasons why chicken might not be the best protein source. The majority of mass-produced chickens, unfortunately, are not raised properly. They do not live lives properly. They do not live outdoors. Many don't even go outdoors. And there's a lot in like cage-free and free range and all these things and all the labeling laws around it where you can call it cage-free and the chicken can literally go outside for like 5 minutes and then come back inside and living its life indoors or in a cage, even worse. There's a lot of issues with industrialized chicken because like I said, it's part of a huge machine that has to make a profit. And to make a profit, you have to have very streamlined and specific machines and techniques and processes. Otherwise, your profit's going to go out the door. And to do that, you're going to remove as much of the nature as you can from that process, right? It makes sense. Like, you have a company that's got to make profit. It's understandable. But that doesn't mean we have to eat that and we shouldn't support it. I mean, hopefully industrialized chicken could just die and it could only be chicken we get from small farmers. I would love that. And that would be best for everybody, including the chickens themselves. So not only do you have this mass processing industrialized system that uses these chickens as a product to make profit from, right? Freaking fly in my hair, what? But then you have issues with the feed. So chickens are not living their natural lives. They're not outdoors, they're not in the sun, they're not roaming around and eating dirt and bugs and grasses and nuts and maybe seeds and whatever else happens to be in a field in nature. They're not getting any of that, which is going to be the most natural, closest to how the species should live and is designed to live. Which leads me to diet. Most chicken is fed in this country corn and soy. A lot of the mass-produced plant foods are actually fed to things like chicken. I won't get into that right now and what's better, what's worse, but the fact is, and we should not be eating industrialized chicken, period. It's just not a natural food. So when chickens are fed corn and soy, like any animal that you eat, it becomes what it eats. So you are what you eat eats. Grass-fed beef, having way more nutrients than if those cows were fed corn and grains and soy and slop and who knows what else. Same thing with chicken, same thing with pork, same thing with any, even fish, which are farm raised and then fed a lot of times corn and soy as well. The problem with chicken, and it's the same problem with all industrialized, low quality, mass produced animal products, is usually the feed is full of antibiotics and hormones. Sometimes those are even administered in addition to the feed, but a lot of times it's even in the feed itself. Even the ones that say are antibiotic free, I'm pretty sure there's a loophole where they can use a certain amount of it and still be able to call it antibiotic free. So, there you go. Thank you, USDA and FDA and all these companies, all these agencies that are supposed to protect us, and all the stupid, absurdly ridiculous lobbied for loopholes that these food companies are allowed to participate in.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you very much for that.
99% of chicken is fed corn and soy, right? So not only does that support the mass agribusiness and the monocrops that are destroying our soils and destroying our environment in general, but we end up eating that ourselves even when we think we're opting for something that's healthier in the form of a chicken or chicken breast or this or that. Unless you're getting local, free-range, corn-free, soy-free chicken, which is really, really hard to find. Personally, I've even gone to the extent of having to source eggs that are corn or soy-free because it affects me and it affects Allison and makes her sick. Can't even eat them. Right? We've been dialed in so much and we've tested so many different eggs that we can literally have a soy-fed chicken egg or a soy or corn-fed chicken egg and compare that to a soy-free, corn-free fed egg, and you can taste and feel the difference. Right? So this is not just a minor thing that might be, exaggerated. This is legit. This is how it works. The foods that you eat from animals are a representation of the foods that they ate and how they lived. Did they live their whole life in a cage? Did they roam free? Were they happy? Were they stressed? All of that ends up in the final product on your plate. And with chicken, unless you're really sourcing very carefully and probably locally and closely and know the farmer and everything, in almost all cases, the chicken is gonna be this mass-produced, corn-fed, soy-fed nonsense. And if you're eating at a restaurant and you're eating chicken, it's 100% of the time, unless you're at like a nice 10 Michelin star restaurant, it's gonna be corn-fed and soy-fed. And it's gonna be full of antibiotics. And that's gonna pass through to you and your children. So as we talked about at the beginning, antibiotics are a huge problem for birds because the way they're raised and grown. I mean, they go from chicks to having massive amounts of these chicks in usually temperature controlled, like big hoop house warehouse, and they grow up like that, and then more and more pressure of the area. They have very little place to move around. Some are even grown in cages. It's really bad stuff. Because of the proximity and the just unnaturalness of raising these birds, they have to use antibiotics. It's very, very common for chicken producers to use antibiotics. That's why local free range, really, really good quality chicken, where you ask the farmer all the questions, is pretty much the only way to go. Now to close this video out, we're going to answer the question of just how carnivore is chicken. We're going to look at the nutrient profile, especially the omega-3 fatty acid profile, and see where that ranks and how that compares to beef, and why at the end of the day, eating lean chicken meat is just not ancestrally appropriate. It's not carnivore appropriate, and it's really not appropriate for any human for all these reasons, even though chicken has kind of been painted in this picture of like the best protein because it's lean meat and it's not red meat. Like literally it's backwards. Like chicken is something that you should have sometimes, whereas the red meat should be the bulk of your diet. So we're gonna cover that real quick, and then I'm gonna let you go. Okay, so we got our fatty acid profile here of chicken. I believe this is like a plain whole roasted chicken rotisserie that I pulled up online somewhere. These numbers aren't perfectly correct, but they do give us a general range. So if we look at the fact that, I think this is based on 100 grams maybe, we got about 3.5 grams of fat, 5%, which is very low in fat. We have very low saturated fat. We have 1.2 grams mono, and then 0.8 the poly, which are the most susceptible omega-6. Hey! Oops. So you see that we got the polyunsaturated, the monounsaturated, saturated. The polyunsaturated are always going to be those easily oxidized fatty acids, the omega-3, the 6, 9, etc. And we're going to look at the ratio of omega-3 to omega-6, and I'm going to try to get this fly right now. I think I got it. So if we go down to the omega-3 and omega-6 right here, look at this ratio here. So what you're trying to find in the food you eat is something like a 1-to-1 omega-3 to omega-6 ratio. That's what has been observed in nature and in the animals in nature, in their wild habitat, that's closest to what's natural and what we would have eaten. And if you look at something like grass-fed beef, it's gonna have a much healthier profile of omega-3 to omega-6. Usually the omega-3 is like 1 to every 3 omega-6, right? And that's way closer to that 1-to-1 ratio. And then you have some animals that have like massive amounts of omega-3, like salmon and sardines, etc. So you're trying to get more omega-3s, less omega-6 generally, because the standard American diet is so chock full of omega-6, and because the seed oils and the vegetable oils and all the plant-based oils are primarily omega-6. And those are easily oxidized, they turn rancid, they cause free radical damage to the body. There's all these issues with them. But when you're looking at the fatty acid profile of any animal, you're always trying to keep that in mind. Does this have a lot of omega-6? And what's the ratio between 3 and 6? Is it closer to 1-to-1, as close as possible, or is it heavily skewed so that omega-6 is way up here and omega-3 is way down here? All right, so if you look at this, we have the math here. We have 70 milligrams of omega-3, and then we have 590 of omega-6. So let's just do the math real quick. Calculator, it's about 8.4. We have about 8 grams of omega-6 for every 1 gram of omega-3. It's about a 1-to-8 ratio. And I think this could even be even higher, you know, the more unhealthy the bird is and depending on their diet and whatever. And if the chickens are fed a really good diet, I'm sure this number will probably be skewed closer to the 1-to-1. But there are certain animals that are just always going to have more omega-6 to omega-3, and it's near universal that most poultry or white meat-based animal foods are going to be higher in the omega-6. Now, we've domesticated these animals, so if you think about the fact that in the wild, we would have caught a bird every so often, or maybe we would have scavenged the kill, and when we did, it would have been a small animal. It wouldn't have been a bulk of our diet. Compare that to eating a huge mammoth, right, or huge bison or buffalo or auroch or something like that, and you have like a ton of meat compared to some birds that have, 5 pounds or 3 pounds or whatever. We would not have eaten a lot of the white meat because there just isn't that much in nature, and birds themselves can fly away, probably one of the harder animals to catch, whereas land animals have less of an advantage. We would have eaten more of them. They're more nutritious. They have better omega-3 to omega-6, and it's one of the reasons why chicken is just not an ideal food to have as a staple for your diet because of these reasons. All the reasons, even if you're getting really, really good chicken, it's still something that you should not be having every meal. It should not be the base of your diet. Red meat, ruminant animals are more nutritious, have more of the vitamins, have better omega-6 to omega-3 ratio, and just are generally better in every way. They taste better. There's more fat on them. Like, it's got a good ratio of fat to protein, which we need fat. And whereas eating something like chicken, you just literally don't have enough fat. And when you do have the fat, it's omega-6. Need I say more? So if we look at this, if we look at real quick again, vitamins and minerals, it's just like everything is 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 5, 7. And it's got some niacin, it's got 30% of B6, 10% of pantothenic acid. It's got some minerals, some phosphorus, some selenium, but overall pretty low. And I'm sure if you compare this to something like beef, I don't know off the top of my head the different vitamins and minerals, but beef or any ruminant animal is going to just blow this out of the water in terms of nutrition. Keep in mind, daily values is a very flawed concept based on the average person and really meant for the standard American diet either. So a lot of these daily values are skewed very high in some instances because when you eat primarily plants, you need actually more of the daily intake because of the anti-nutrients in those plants, and it just needs to be rewritten for the most part. It's not completely accurate. So I don't really like going based on daily value, but let's just say if we took that as a minimum level of measurement of nutrition, meat and ruminant animals are going to just be way better in that regard. It's just going to provide more vitamins and minerals and a higher percent of daily value. Okay, so that's going to be it for today's video. How to think about chicken. Short video, nothing crazy. I didn't go super in depth, of course. Chicken is one of those things that if you can get it locally, if you can get it from a small farmer, if you're doing it the right way, it's going to taste pretty tasty actually. And it's something that I like to include in my diet from time to time. But I stay away from all chicken in restaurants. I don't like buying any chicken that's mass produced. And if I'm getting chicken from the store, if it's organic, if it's humanely raised, if it's got, I don't know, free range, or if it's got a story even that says like they live all their lives outside, that's great. I'd buy that. But you just don't see that, right? I've literally never seen it even here in Austin. The only chicken I've been able to find has been online or at the local farmer's market where I can ask farmers exactly how do the birds live. Do they live outside all the time? Do you feed them grains? Do you feed them corn? Do you feed them soy? Do you feed them a certain feed? What's in the feed? Is it antibiotics? Is it not? Do you make your own feed? There's a lot of ways to do that. You can use like nuts and seeds and other natural things that are not corn and soy. There's a lot of ways to do this. For the most part, though, if you stayed away from most chicken at the grocery store and at restaurants, it's probably better. So my name is Colin. I'm the Wild CEO. Thanks for stopping by. If this is the first time you've seen me, make sure you like and share and subscribe. Hit that bell button. I got a ton of more videos coming out. I'm going to cover everything in the animal kingdom, all things health from an ancestral perspective so that you can live better and make better decisions and say no to a lot of the big dogma that's alive today from big pharma, big medical, big food, and the really, really, really bad advice you see all over the internet about nutrition and how you should eat 6 meals a day and you should eat lots of carbs and grains are the base of the food pyramid and blah, freaking blah. Completely and utterly backwards to how humans are designed by nature to live a certain way. And we can mimic that. We can get these results, but it requires understanding and challenging certain dogmas. And so that's what I'm here today to do, is to try to dispel some of these dogmas and give you the actual information that you can then take and use on your own if you want. And when you do, you probably get results and you'll be happy. That's what I want. So like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Hey, Colin here. Thanks for watching that video. I got a free PDF for you, The 7 Principles of Living Wild. Short and sweet, not long, not going to be a novel you have to read or anything. Just a simple reference of the things that make you a healthy human. So click on the button below, get that right now, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.